turn and keep our eye on the markets this morning. As you can see, they are up right now. And I'm pretty excited about our next guest for Money Power Politics, the new president of the New York Stock Exchange, Stacey Cunningham. Stacey, thank you for joining me. Not just because you're a woman, this is a tremendous achievement, but think about it. Women in the financial industry, you are now the president of the NYSE. We've got a female running the NASDAQ. Extraordinary times.
Yeah, it is extraordinary times.
I want to talk about regulation. This administration is all about deregulation, specifically in the financial sector. What's your take?
You know, I think it's interesting. I think when you look at some of the things that the administration is doing, you would expect them to be more along the lines of deregulation than some of the actions that we're actually seeing. Some of the proposals from the SEC are actually introducing more restrictions on some of the markets, which is surprising.
Why do you think deregulation is a good idea? I mean, we saw Dodd-Frank and the Volcker Rule get put in place, and maybe there's overreach, but they're put in place because of the financial crisis that the banking industry could have avoided, but there wasn't very much regulation.
Yeah, it's important to strike the right balance. So when we look at attracting the public markets, making the public markets attractive to companies of all sizes, it's important that we have the right balance of regulation. Because if the pendulum swings too far, then we're creating an environment that big public companies can handle, where they can deal with the regulations, and we're leaving the smaller and mid-sized companies out of the game. And we want to avoid doing that.
So the new SEC pilot program, you're going down to D.C. to talk about it. You don't like it. We're getting rid of Dodd-Frank. We're getting rid of the Volcker Rule. What does that leave us with then?
Well, I don't think we're getting rid of any of those regulations. I think we're looking at, can we scale back some of the provisions that are within the regulations to make sure that we're creating a competitive environment for investors and companies of all sizes. That's certainly important. On the new things that are being proposed, the transaction fee pilot that you referenced, we're actually going the other way there and introducing government price setting. And I really think the way it's designed, it's an overly complex and expensive experiment in government price setting. So we are concerned about that one. I certainly think there's a really robust regulatory framework in place, and we'll continue to see that.
So for the average person on the street who says, hold on, in the subprime crisis, I lost my house, or the banking industry or the auto industry got bailed out, and I'm still suffering. I'm somebody who doesn't own stocks or bonds. Who's protecting me?
Yeah, the average person is exactly who I'm thinking about. That's who we're considering when we look at waiting for big companies to come to market. If a company that's very small becomes public, that's when they see their biggest trajectory of growth. We want the average investor to get to partake in that and plan for their futures and invest for their futures. If we wait until they're already a really large public company, we're leaving that growth to the large investors that are professional investors. We're leaving the little guy out. We don't want to do that.
When you look at the kind of companies, the amount of companies that are going public today, why is it on the decline?
Well, so for exactly those reasons, because of the regulatory framework, because it's so expensive to be a public company, and also there is other alternatives. There's access to private capital that provides different choices for public companies. And we just want to make sure that we're creating a framework that allows companies to come public sooner, not just here in the U.S. We want to make sure we're attracting global companies to the U.S. as well. The U.S. capital markets are the envy of the world, and it's my job to make sure we keep it that way.
I got to ask you the woman question.
Yeah.
You won't be the first. As stoked as I am for you, you meet with CEOs, you meet with boards every day. Why do we see the number of women CEOs of Fortune 500 companies declining?
It's sad. It really is. And I think part of the issue is that there aren't enough women in senior roles throughout the organizations, in the CEO roles, and in the boardroom. So when the board is choosing a CEO, if you don't have women on boards, they're not going to focus on creating that diversity level as much as they should be. So I think we really need to lead by example. We need to make sure that we're putting more diverse teams in place at every level of the organization, especially as we get more senior.
Why do you think it's not happening, though? The women exist. It's not that there is a drought of women who want senior positions, who want to join boards, but when you look across boards, it's a sea of white dudes. And if you look at activist investors who go after companies, they're putting the same 10 white guys on boards. And when you listen to analyst calls, I've never heard an analyst say, what are you doing about diversity on that board?
Right. Well, I think one of the things that we need to understand is that men and women operate differently. They think differently, they behave differently, and react differently. We have structured our markets and our boards in a very male-dominated way, making sure that we're creating an environment where women are not just welcome, but they're actually pulled up into those organizations, I think is really important.
Long-termism, how important is it to you?
Yeah, it's important to us. It's important to our issuers. It's important across the board when we look at how are we making decisions. And that's one of the reasons why I think we see public companies or companies choosing whether or not they want to be public if they're evaluated each quarter.
Stacey, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You've gone downtown and saw that Fearless Girl statue. You don't have to look at the statue. You can see the real thing right next to me.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.